I know I'm ready. I know you're ready out there. Welcome back once again, everybody. Oh, okay. It really is zooming in on my face today. That's nice. Okay. Oh, okay, it's the other camera today. Okay, I like that even more. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put it out there because I'm not standing here. Okay. Oh, that's even better. Okay. There we go. Now people can see me. Okay, great. All right, so announcements. I have several announcements, Chapter 7 was the end of the Exam 2 content. So your second exam, chapters 5 through 7, should be out there in the module, should be out there on Canvas. Again, I've said this several times, you do that one on your own. It's untimed, it's 50 multiple choice questions. Take your time on it. You do a few per day. You can leave the exam anytime you want, come back in anytime you want. You should be done within 2 weeks' time. Okay, so that exam is out there and it's there and ready. Second announcement, research projects, individual research projects, they will be sent soon. Soon means it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be Thursday. It will be sent soon, I promise. It will be there. So you will each get your own individual computer to research. Yes, it'll be at random that I pick these. So please, I will make the announcement that I've sent them all to your inboxes. You can check them. And all you're going to do is you're going to copy and paste essentially 3 things. One, it has to be more than 250 words. So wherever you're going and getting this information, you're welcome to copy and paste it into the Word document. Second, I need an image of what you're actually researching. So you can copy the image and paste it into your Word document. And that's there. However, there's such a thing as plagiarism and stuff. So please put the link where you got your information, or links where you got the information from. That's all I'm asking. It's not an English paper, but if you want it to be an English paper and you want to be all formal and stuff like that, I'm okay with that. I don't judge on anything. Now, if you just want to like have fun with it and start doing all kinds of like neat formatting stuff and change your fonts and do all that stuff, that's on you. You're allowed to do that. I don't judge that. I'm not going to throw it back at you and say, well, it looked weird, so you're going to have to do it again. No, that's fine. Whatever you do, please, don't send me an Apple Pages document. Don't send me something I can't open. Word documents are fine. PDFs are fine. I'm okay with any of those formats. Just don't send it to me in a Mac format, please, because then I got to go find some interpreter for it, and then I've got to figure out what to do with it. So if you can please save your documents as like Word docs, that would be great. Yes, you can do it in Google Docs. I don't care what program you use to do it. But that's all I'm looking for on the research project, or pretty much those 3 components. So if you can't copy and paste within like 10 minutes time and save the document, I think we're in a lot of trouble at this point in the class. So you should be able to copy and paste it. It'll be the easiest points you earn ever. So today begins the content for the 3rd exam in this class, which covers chapters 8 through 10. And I'm going to be going over communications and networks. Now keep in mind, there's going to be a lot of terminology in today's, like a lot of definitions in today's class, a lot more than we've seen in the last several classes. I'm going to go through it as simply as I can. All right, so definitely living in a connected society now. Increased connectivity, more and more and more connectivity. Businesses need it, we need it. We've seen changes over the last 20, 25 years, big changes over the last 20, 25 years since the turn of this century. And so we need to be connected now more than ever. So keep in mind, the definition of computer communications is the process of sharing data, applications, that's programs, and information between, and here's what I don't like, 2 or more computers. Of course, if I'm communicating with you over my phone, are we technically on computers? The answer is yes, that is correct. And we have a lot of different apps that we use. We've talked about this in previous chapters. I don't really need to explain that. The wireless revolution has been around for a long time. We no longer have to be confined with wires. We don't have to be confined behind podiums like you see me out here today. I don't have to be in front of a podium. But we are now connected to so many resources like we have so many resources, it's literally impossible not to find something on a topic these days. Like you can even talk it, right? You can even talk into your phone and it'll come up, right? Or even talk to your computer and it'll come up. So yeah, I've seen I love technology, it's great. All right, so I want you just to envision something here, okay? You're like, wait, you're gonna start on this side for this one? You're going over to this side for a change? No way. All right, I'm starting over here, but don't worry, I want to end over on that side over there, because I'm not gonna walk all the way. I'm not gonna make my people over here look at me all the way over here. Hang on, you too, I'll be right over there. All right, so you're gonna send me a text. You need a device to do that, right? Like a phone, or you're gonna send me an email, right? Then there's your message. You have to have a connection device of some kind. Okay, you gotta have a connection device of some kind to be able to send that message, okay? Then, that message goes through what is called, don't worry, I'm gonna talk about this stuff. It goes through what is called the communication channel. And it gets broken up into little packets, okay? You're like, you mean like through cyberspace? Essentially, right? You gotta think about it like this, right? Because when we do this wirelessly, it's like, you're transmitting it, right? So it gets busted up into packets. Now for me to receive your message, I have to have a connection device. Then your message gets reassembled and I see it on my end. How fast do texts come and go? Pretty quick, right? We don't think about that. We just send it, somebody gets it. But what happens when you send it and they don't get it? Oops. Or it's unable to send. Oh, don't you love that message? That has to do with your connection device. So, especially if you're traveling, and you've got Wi-Fi turned on, I'll just do my best to turn mine off, especially if I'm driving and I want to send a message. Oh wait, that's right, you're not supposed to do that while you're driving. I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, there's like a law against that, right? Okay, anyway, I didn't mean that. Okay, so, when you're traveling and it's changing networks all the time, it's like when you leave your house and all of a sudden it changes from your network to, this is like Wi-Fi disconnected. And I'm like, okay, I gotta wait until I get down the street to send a message. That has to do with my connection device. So I'm gonna go over all these things, but just keep in mind that you're sending and receiving devices. Just think about this logically. It's your phones, if you can send messages from tablets, it's your tablet, your laptop, all the different types of computers that we talked about. Those are your sending and receiving devices. But they have to go across some kind of communication channel. So the communication channel where you saw it broken up into packets, those are the channels that carry the data from one device to the other. I'm gonna say devices here because that's what we used on the last slide, right? Or computers, essentially. We can either do this physically, yes, computers can be physically connected, or wirelessly. For the most part, most of us do what? Which one of these do most of us use? Wireless, right. I remember the old days of physical. We really couldn't do much then. Well, physical connections, hopefully some of this is, you know this. But keep in mind that with our physical connections, we have twisted pair cables, like with our DSL. That is, if you cut the cord open, it's a twisted pair of cables inside of there. Coaxial cable is 80 times faster than twisted pair. However, some of us are not using coaxial cable anymore. We are using fiber optics, which is really, really fast. If you know how fast light travels, that's fast, right? Then yes, our physical connection speeds are getting much faster than they were before. We're seeing a lot more fiber optic cable now. All right, so just gonna mention a few of the different wireless connections that are out there. Bluetooth, so this is gonna be one of your questions on the quiz today. So once you get past, you got your earbud in, right? And you're next to your computer, you got Bluetooth, and you're like, all right, then you gotta go do something, and you forget that you're connected to Bluetooth. If you go far enough away from your computer, all of a sudden your speakers on your computer start blaring, and it's no longer the earbud anymore. So if you get roughly about, just as you get past 30 feet away from your device, the signal becomes unstable. Then once we get, of course, out of range, it doesn't connect. However, once we get back in range, it connects again. So keep in mind that Bluetooth is short range, like roughly 30 feet. Wi-Fi has been around since the dawn of time. And yes, it used to be megabits per second, but now we are in the gigabits per second. If you don't know what that means, I have a slide on that in just a little bit. We'll talk about that. But again, Wi-Fi is made, the word's up there, for short distances. Why do you think we have to have all these, well, I'm going to talk about this in a minute. Why do we have to have cell towers all over town? It's because it's short range. It's not long range. So you see all the different standards that are up there. They've evolved over time. It used to be 802.11g, then N, then AC, now AX, and you know how much faster it's getting. Microwave is not the thing I cooked the popcorn in. Well, maybe it is. But this has to do with radio waves. And with microwaves, you have to have a direct line of sight between your device and that tower. So remember what I just said about cell phones? We have to have towers all over town so that we can connect to our network. Otherwise, we can't. That's why they're all over the place. You're going to hear a term called WiMAX also. This means Worldwide Interoperability for Microwave Access. No, I'm not really going to test you on that one, but keep in mind if you ever have a WiMAX enabled device, that extends the distances of Wi-Fi. We also sell people long-term evolution. LTE has been around for a long time as well. And I love what the textbook says about this, and that is it's the industry's promise for faster speeds. Duh. I hope we have faster speeds. Don't worry, we're going to have a whole slide on cell phones. You're going to love it. It's coming. You knew I got to have something, right? I hope you know where satellites are found. Otherwise, I think we're in a lot of trouble. I don't think I really have to talk about that much. But keep in mind, though, keep this in mind too, satellite connections are a lot slower than DSL connections, cable connections, fiber optic connections. Let's keep that in mind. Because think about this. It's a longer distance to travel, right? To the satellite from, yeah, so that's why it's slower. And last but not least, infrared devices. Sometimes I push these buttons and the slide doesn't advance. So it has to have a line of sight to, I actually plug it in down there. I don't plug it in up here. So if I'm far enough away, I'm not going to be able to use any of the buttons on my clicker. But the clicker is not Bluetooth. This is infrared. No, I'm not going to try. See, I just clicked it. Oh. There it goes. See, that was a good example right there. All right, I had to do that 3 times. So anyway, modem stands for modulator, demodulator, modem. Keep in mind that is the process of converting. I've said this before. I said I was going to talk about it again. Think about this. Our voices and what we do are analog. The computer recognizes what types of signals? Not analog. It's up on the board. It's up on the slide.
Digital?
If we're analog, yes, the computers recognize digital signals. So there has to be some kind of conversion for that to happen. And this can happen in the megabits per second, the gigabits per second, or the terabits per second. And those are bits, not bytes. Okay, so again, talked about the signals already. And here's what the transfer rates mean. So over time, we've gone from millions of bits per second. Some of us now are running billions. Actually, more and more people are running billions of bits per second. Companies, though, are running like trillions of bits. Like organizations are running like trillions of bits per second. And that's a massive speed, right? Like that's some massive power. But yes, more and more homes are seeing the billions of bits per second. Again, I don't know if you need that fast of a connection. Maybe you do. Of course, I haven't even talked about all the people that have to share your connection. That's what I'm going to get into right here. So, we're talking about the trillions of bits per second, right? So, companies lease optical carrier lines now. I talked about fiber optics earlier. It's fast. It's very, very fast connection speeds. So again, we're talking into the trillions of bits per second. However, they're high capacity, but they're also expensive. They're very, very expensive for companies to run. And keep in mind, these leased lines that these organizations use, it's a dedicated line to that company only. They're not sharing it with anybody else. unlike my fellow cable people, where we have to share the connection with everybody on our block, essentially. And so if a lot of people are using that, you're gonna have slower speeds. I know I just jumped right to cable, right? DSL, however, digital subscriber line, is just like a leased line where you don't have to share it with other people. It's your own connection. However, on average, it is slower than cable. And asynchronous digital subscriber line, that's ADSL, is the most widely used type of DSL, which means that the download speeds are faster than the upload speeds. Because we do more of what out of downloading and uploading? What do we do most, for the most part? Come on, you know the answer to that question. Do we download more or upload more?
Download.
We download more, YouTube people. We download all the time. I'm downloading every day. I do. I really do that. I download a lot of stuff, yeah. Okay, that's why I need that fast connection. Anyway, talked about satellite connections before. Though it can be used anywhere, it is slower. It is much slower speeds. Yes, I have to talk about it because I've had students in here that actually use that. There you go. You knew you were gonna get this. You knew it was coming. All right, 1980s. How big were cell phones?
Big ass blocks.
Yeah, right. You have to like carry it, right? Or like the bricks, right? They really call them the bricks. Actually, that was in the 90s. You had the bricks. So keep in mind that 1G is slow. 2G finally did get some digital signals in the 90s. However, my cell phone was analog. It was not digital. Because we could only do one thing with cell phones back in the 80s and 90s. And what was that?
Call.
Yeah, that's it. That's why I had one in the 90s. My dad goes, "Why do you need a cell phone?" Like, well, I ride a bike all over town, and if I get into trouble, I got to call you. He goes, "Okay, that makes sense." But that's all we could do with those back then. Even though everybody thought it was cool that I actually had a cell phone, I actually had to take the antenna and go. It was neat, but it wasn't a brick though. Thank God it wasn't a brick. All right, I still have that phone, by the way. So anyway, 2005. I know that doesn't sound that long ago. We finally get 3G, so we can finally start accessing the internet through our phones, through web browsers. And if you've never typed letters on a flip phone before to text somebody, oh my God, that was terrible. So I'm glad these newer phones came out, because that drove me insane for years. So 3G comes out, then 4G comes out soon after 3G, actually. And 4G was around forever. 4G was around for a good 15 years. It was 10 times faster than 3G. But now we have 5G, thank goodness. And it is much faster. You like my word, much faster? I decided to put, no, this is not a slide that came with the textbook. I just decided to do this. So it is much faster. It's actually faster than some home networks, 5G. Some people use 5G as their home network because it's faster. You've seen the commercials. I hope the light bulb just went off. Okay. Anyway, now we have WiMAX and LTE. I talked about those before, 4G and 5G. Oh, and on your 5G phones, yes, sometimes you do see 4G speeds. And my unlimited people, if you use too much data, I always love the fine print in the commercials at the bottom. I have to pause the commercial to read it before it goes away. If you use too much data, for some of you, your speeds go down to 2G. 2, not 4. 2. You see it up there. That was 1990s. That's slow. That's really slow. So yes, I try to use my home network on my cell phone when I'm at home. I don't like to use the cell network because I don't want to use up whatever the maximum amount of bandwidth is. So anyway, moving on. So now we have fiber optic services, all kinds of fiber optic services that are out there as well. So I just want you to think about this. If you don't know what E.T. the movie is, Google it. So upper right corner, seriously, Google it if you don't know what it is. I'm not telling you what it is. So anyway, with 3G, it would take me 12 hours to download that movie. 4G, it takes me 10 minutes. 5G, it takes me 3 seconds. Yeah, that's better, right? Some of you are like, how the heck did you survive 2G and 1G? Yeah, don't ask. Don't ask. I don't know what I did. I'm like, I would have this phone and I'm like, how come I can't contact anybody other than calling? I said that for years, like, why don't they come up with something that I can actually, like, use the internet with? Then they finally did, and I was like, thank God. So anyway, there it is. All right, there's your history on cell phone. All right, so we're talking about bandwidth. And that simply means the measurement of the width or capacity of that communication channel. Remember I talked about that communication channel that we need to send and receive messages? So there are 4 categories of this. Most of us use broadband. I believe that's one of the quiz answers for this chapter. Most of us use broadband. Some people in this room, all right, fine, it's me. I also have voice band at home because, well, when the internet goes down, I still have a phone I can use. No, they're not the old rotary phones. They're actually have buttons on them, and yes, and you have the speaker phone and all that. So anyway, yes, we had to have voice band in there also. Now, computers that are connected to one another, that's pretty much every computer in this room because they're all connected to the wall. We're talking about medium band. All those are connected, or excuse me, baseband. Those are all connected to each other. That's baseband. Medium band, remember I talked about those leased lines that companies lease? That's medium band, also used in mainframes. But those are your 4 different types of bandwidth, but most of us use broadband. Okay, yes, we're always connected. So yes, for those of you that need more data, please consult your companies for that. Anyway, moving on. Protocols. So, a couple of things about this. I think that one of these is the trick question that you're going to need to make a note of for your extra credit this time because I think it might be in there. I'm not sure. I haven't checked in a while, but so anyway, you should know by now because we did chapter 2. We went over chapter 2. That HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which means on my web browser on my computer, or as you're going to hear me call this the client device, I have to have a web browser, I have to put in my URL up in the address bar, HTTP whatever, and I'm asking the server to give me that content. So it needs a protocol. I've talked about protocols before. It's the rules between exchanging data between computers. So with Hypertext Transfer Protocol, we're asking the server to download hypertext content onto our client device. HTTPS, almost every website has that now. And yes, if you're doing research for your individual research projects, if you joined us late, I wrote it up on the board. You should be using HTTPS like for anything that you're researching. It should be secure. I would just let you know this. There are some legitimate regular HTTP sites out there. Just don't put any personal information in. Email used to be HTTP only for the longest time until they finally got it secure. Now keep in mind, any transaction you do out there for like shopping or anything, or anytime you have to put a username and password in, it better be HTTPS. Because that encrypts your data, which I thought I talked about before, but I know I'm going to talk about it, I think, again, next chapter in chapter 9 next week. All right, so back in the 1970s, that was a long time ago, the Transmission Control Protocol / Internet Protocol was developed. No, I'm not going to bore you to tears with this. I'm just going to give you this in a very, very easy way. The 2 items are up there underneath it. So with this protocol, every one of our devices needs a unique IP address. I'm talking of internet protocol address. And that means, just think about this. If I'm like sending a regular letter, I have to have the address I'm sending it to, and I put my return address on there too so they can send it back. But think about our devices. They also need addresses. So, my question to you, everybody in this class, is how many devices do you think you have where you live or that connect to a network? How many devices? Just rattle them off. How many? Go for it.
5.
5?
4.
4? What? 10? Yeah, I'm there too. I think I'm at 12. Because remember, people's like, well, not my refrigerators. I told you I'm not buying that stuff, right? If your smart TVs are connected to your network, like you got more devices now than you might think of. Any printer that's on your network, that's another device that needs an IP address. So for the people that responded, it was 29 between the 4 of us. So let's just say 7. We'll take the average. 12. So we've chewed up 84 IP addresses just like that. Think about all the computers in this place. Every computer has its own IP address. We have 30 of them in here. Wow, we're already up to 114. So, up in the upper right corner, IP addresses with IP version 4, where the numbers 0 to 255, this should be somewhat familiar to you also, the 0 to 255 thing, separated by dots, a series of 4 values separated by dots. Now think about this. You actually run it, if you think about what we just did right there, 114 IP addresses in this room, easy, combined between us and the computers, or 115. Because we all have phones in here too. I don't know if you factored that into your numbers, but we also have cell phones, right? So those numbers would be chewed up really, really, really fast. So IP version 6 came out. This is the identification part, the unique IP addresses I'm talking about. IPv6 came out, so now there's literally going to be limitless in our lifetime, in your lifetime too. They're not going to change the version of that. It's going to stay IPv6. Because now we're talking trillions and trillions and trillions of devices. That number is so big I can't even talk about it. You can look it up. It's some massive power, like 10 to the something massive power, or 2 to the 128th power, I think it is. Somebody can fact check me on that one. I thought it was 2 to the 128th power. But if you want to fact check me on that one, go ahead. That's IPv6 is what it's called. But think about 2 to the 128th power. That's a pretty high number. So I don't think we're going to ever run it out. All right, I got to tell you this. This is my most favorite definition of any definition I'm going to talk about in the entire course, and that's packetization. Remember I said this earlier? We send the message, it gets broken up into little packets, and then it gets reassembled on the other end. So just keep that in mind, that's the actual name of the process, is packet. Ooh, I was too loud today. He actually shut the door. So anyway, packetization. Dorian will be out of here soon. Packetization, we're almost done. So that's the actual term. That's the actual name of the term, of the process. So when you're sending that text message to somebody and it gets broken up, that's packetization. But if we don't have those two things, the messages can't be sent. So you got to have those. All right, sorry, I get a little excited. That's the first time he's ever done that. Probably because I told him this is my last year of doing in-person stuff. Okay, I'm going to get a little more animated over this next several months. So anyway, the next thing we're going to talk about, we talked about communications, that's done. Now let's talk about our networks. Now this is where you're going to see a lot of definitions. So I'm going to just go through this nice and easy. But keep in mind that networks, when you think about it, connects 2 or more, and I don't like the word computers, I'm going to go with devices. Because think about this. What if I in my house, I only have one computer, but I have a printer that's also connected to the network? Printer's not a computer. It does require an IP address, but it's not a computer. So technically, it's 2 or more devices. I like 2 or more devices, that word, instead of computers. But for most of us, we probably do have 2 computers somewhere, our phone and a laptop, or our phone and a tablet, or a phone and a phone. My wife, okay. I'm like, why do you need 2 phones? All right, those things are going off all the time. Of course, mine's always on silent, so, okay. So anyway, she goes, that's why you're not stressed out. I'm like, yeah, I shut my phone off. I'll respond to people when I feel like it. All right, so here we go, everybody. A lot to talk about here. So in a network, anything that's connected to it is what's called a node. Again, could be your cell phone, could be a printer, could be a computer, could be a network, it could be a switch, or which I'll talk about in the next slide. It could be all kinds of different devices that are on that network. So those are nodes. One thing I haven't talked about in previous classes, because I believe it's an answer to one of the quiz questions, so I added it to your slides today, and that's a network gateway. So this is a node that's on there that connects 2 networks together. So keep in mind, I said this about the internet a long time ago. The internet is a massive collection, it's a network of networks all across the globe. But to connect from one network to another network, you need what is called a network gateway. Now keep in mind, these network gateways can be wireless and you don't even see them. There you go. You're like, do I see these? No, technically you don't. Unless you're actual like network administrator that's working with this stuff all the time, then you might manage a network gateway. Client versus server. So I've been talking about client server in this class several times. Again, the example that I used was you accessing a website through your web browser. Your device, your computer, is the client. You're requesting something, data, something from the server, where all of it is stored, where all of it is saved. Directory servers are out there that manage resources, and hosts or computer systems that can be accessed over a network. Now, we might have a router or a switch as well. Organizations do have a lot of switches. So in that networking classroom that's over in that corner of the building, there are a lot of these network switches. They look like boxes with a bunch of ports inside of them. So switches coordinate the flow of data between computers in an organization. Yes, you can have them in your own home, and they work that way, but you can actually see the traffic that goes between all the different computers as a network administrator. Routers are nodes that forward those packets. Yes, they route the packets. Remember the packets? Yeah, I was a little too animated with that, and he had to shut his door. That's the first time in like 5 years I was able to do that. So anyway, you get to go home smiling today. So just keep in mind that there are devices called routers that route, get it? Those packets between the devices. Talked about network interface cards in this class. I'm not going to talk about that again. Talked about network operating systems before in this class. Keep in mind that network administrators do make quite a bit of money, and they are responsible for network operations. You know where I'm going to be at the end of this chapter, right? You know what the career is for this chapter, right? I hope so. I just said it. Okay, so anyhow, this is not, if you downloaded or looked at the slides that are out there on the module, I changed some of this stuff. So I want you to think geographically when you think about these different network types. So personal area network would be like my phone, we're at a restaurant, everyone's like, how come I can't connect? I'm like, I can. You put the phone down, access a hotspot, you give everyone the password, they log in, and they're able to access a network. That's a personal area network. So that's a very short distance. That's not like very far. You put your phone on the table, everyone's at the table, that's a personal area network. Home networks can be defined differently. If you're in an apartment, that's your home network, that's your home network. But you can probably still access it down the hall, or you can probably still access it a certain amount of feet away from where you live until it drops. For me, if I go out in the front of my house, it drops literally when I just go outside and start going down the driveway. It goes out. It says Wi-Fi disconnected the minute I get out there. Now, if I go in my backyard, by the way, which has nothing, it's dirt for 16 years, it's just dirt. It's still there, dirt. I live in Phoenix. How often do I really want to go outside? So, maybe this fall sometime, but I mean, outside of that, before winter hits, right? We're going to have our 2 weeks of fall before winter hits. It's coming, people. And by the end of this semester, we're all going to be dressed a little bit differently than we are now. Well, maybe not me, but I'm kidding. I'll probably have a jacket or something. But anyway, just think about that for home networks. They're different for different people. However, still not that large of a range. Now, here's a very confusing thing I want to talk about, and that's local area networks. I'm going to tell you, I've done the research. You can go do the research too, but I'm going to save you some time. A local area network might just be this room. It might just be the floor of this building. It might be both floors of the building. It might be this building and surrounding buildings. Think about the main campus. That's all on one local area network. That's a pretty wide range. It's longer than a home network, but it's shorter than a metropolitan area network. I hope you know what the word metropolitan means. If you don't, please Google it. I'm kidding. That's like for like a city or for like, yeah. It's a larger range. Then there are wide area networks. The world's largest wide area network is called what? The what? The internet. That's the answer to the question, yes. Usually it takes people like 5 minutes to answer that. Thank you. So, yes, the world's largest wide area network is called the internet. Please keep that in mind. I think that's a quiz question. And I hope you know what wireless means, otherwise we're in a lot of trouble. Okay. Moving on. So for the next part of this class, I'm going to talk about how networks are arranged. We call this the network architecture. How it's arranged and how the resources are shared. Yes, the video I'm going to show you, I don't know why he hasn't updated it, but it still pertains to our networks today. So I do have a short video on network topologies. Keep in mind that the topology itself is the physical arrangement of the network. Now, of course, some of you are going to be like, well, how do I know what the physical arrangement of the network is? Sometimes you don't. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes you don't, unless you're the network administrator. And sometimes you do. And I'm going to say this because when you hear the example, some of you are going to be like, ah, okay, that's what that is. And then for network strategies, I'll talk about that in a few moments. I did already talk about client server. But yes, I do have a video I'm going to go ahead and queue up. And yes, I'm going to stop him and talk during this, so just like I do with every video, right? I'm just going to stop him and talk during this.
If you've been tasked with
Just give this a
creating
minute.
some
Don't worry about
documentation
this
of your
opening
network
part to the video.
configuration, you might want to create a physical
worry about the
network
opening
map.
part of the
This
video.
would show us exactly what devices might be on the network,
He's just
and
talking
it would show
about
the
that when
physical
you're working
cable
with
connections
networks.
from one interface to another. It's also common for people to create a physical map of where devices might be installed in a particular rack. That would allow you to go into a data center to a specific rack and identify exactly the piece of equipment that's listed in your documentation. These days, of course, you may be working with network equipment
Right.
that
So
isn't
you can
physical
use
at all,
software
maybe
like Microsoft
virtualized,
Visio,
or you
like
may
he's
want to
talking
provide
about.
a higher
So you
level
actually
view of
develop
how the
these
network
maps
connects together.
for a network.
In those cases, instead of creating a
Little items.
physical
See all
network
this?
map, you may want to create a
Okay,
logical
that's-
network map.
It's gonna
And
go-
regardless
it's gonna
of the
get here.
type of map you plan on creating, you'll want to use some specialized software to do this. In Windows, you might want to use Visio. Mac OS has OmniGraffle, and there are also third-party websites that allow you to create these graphics inside of your browser itself. These would be high-level views that would show how a wide area network may be connected, or it may show the logical communication of an application as it goes from a web server into middleware and then the database backend. If you're working with a third party, it's common to use this logical network map to show how an application data flow may be working, or to see exactly how the network may be laid out across a large area. This is a good starting point, and then you can work down further to find more details in the configuration as the collaboration goes along. There are many different ways to represent a network topology in these diagrams. One network topology type might be the star network. This is a very common network type in today's switch networks, where you have a centralized device like a switch, and all of the devices are connected directly to that switch. The switch effectively sits in the middle, and everybody else connects to it over these Ethernet links. Another common topology type is the ring topology, where all of the devices are connected to each other in a ring form. We used to have token ring networks as very popular local area networks, but now that those are no longer very common, you would see ring networks in things like metropolitan area networks and wide area networks. It's very common to see these ring networks implemented
rings
as
means if
dual
one ring
ring
gets cut,
networks.
the other
That way,
ring
if
is
there
still
is a
going.
break in the network, it can loop onto itself for fault tolerance and maintain the uptime of the
That's what
entire
fault
ring
tolerance
by
means,
providing
that
that
if
loop
something
onto
happens,
itself.
it's still going.
For even additional fault tolerance, you may want to
Mesh.
consider implementing a mesh network.
Hey, wait a minute.
This is one that
We just talked about the world's largest wide area network. Does this look like the internet across the world? Picture this globally, okay? So if one part of the world gets taken out, the rest of it is still connected. So for my conspiracy theorists, I get those from time to time in this class, I'm just saying, you can try to take the whole thing out. That's really, really tough to do. It's really going to be tough to do. Now, of course, then people go, what about electromagnetic pulses? Well, how come that hasn't happened yet? I keep saying that. How come it hasn't happened yet? It should have by now. I mean, I guess it could happen, but I mean, I don't really worry about that stuff on a day-to-day basis. All right, let's keep going.
that has many different links to be able to get to the same place. It might have all of the different locations connected to every other location, or it might be a partial link where some locations are connected to other locations. You would commonly implement a mesh network if you were looking for something that was redundant and fault tolerant, or if you needed to balance load between multiple links. You often see mesh being used in wide area networks since there are so many opportunities to have a link go down. You would have redundancy in a way to route around the problem using this mesh network topology. A bus topology is a connection that all other devices connect to. Very common use of bus.
So what could go wrong with this one? They're all connected to what? They're all connected to this, right? What happens if that gets cut?
Everything goes up.
There it is! Okay, I know, this is rough.
Technology
That's
was in
rough.
early networks where we would have a single coax cable and connect all devices onto that coax cable so they could communicate to each other. This was obviously a very easy network to implement because you simply used a single cable that everyone would connect to. But if you did have a break in that cable, it would disable the entire network. One place you might find a modern bus technology is in your automobile. This is called a controller area network, or a CAN bus type of network. And that's where all of the internal devices inside of your car are able to connect to this single bus and communicate between each other. Although we don't use cables to communicate over our wireless networks, there are still some logical network topologies that we use with our 802.1.
I'm going to fast forward just a moment.
Simply configure both end stations to.
So just keep in mind that this is the end of the video. So just keep in mind that sometimes there are times with infrastructure where all the devices communicate through an access point. Keep in mind, in this classroom, we have 2 access points in this room. Those are the elongated boxes that you see up on the ceiling. Those are these ones. They're the elongated boxes that say like Cisco on it or whatever. Those are our wireless access points. We have them all throughout the building. Yes, that was done on purpose so that people could actually connect. So we have connectivity in every single room. So yes, it's possible for devices to connect through some kind of access point. Now there might be more than one access point. I'm just letting you all know that. In our homes though, unfortunately, sometimes there is only one access point, and if that goes down, I guess we switch to our cell networks then at that point, right? If it goes down. Yeah, ours went down for 2 days and they didn't even tell us why. And I'm like, I'm not gonna get it back for 2 days. I said, hey everybody, guess what we're using? We're using our cell phones. Don't worry, I was still streaming during that time because, the hotspot thing, right? So I just logged on my computer, I used my phone as my access point. I logged in through my computer, I'm like, I can stream. My wife goes, how did you stream? We were down for 2 days. I'm like, hey, use your phone as the access point, turn your computer on, put the password in. I don't need my cable company. I don't need my cable company. All right, that's pretty much the end of the video. I'm not gonna show you any more. Let's go through the slides really quick. So the bus network, talked about that one. You know what the problem is. If the middle of it gets cut, the rest of the devices go down. The ring network, he talked about dual rings now. And again, how do you know if it's a ring network? Well, you've got to be a system administrator to learn these things, but you did get some ideas as to where they might be implemented. Star network, talked about the problem with that. Moving on. Did not talk about the tree network, but logically I would like you to think about this diagram. So, it'd be pretty fast for these two computers to connect to each other, but what if this computer needs to connect to that computer? And it's got to go where? Yeah, so it's going to be a little slower for that to happen. But again, it looks like a hierarchy. It looks like an organization chart. Talked about the mesh networks. Some people actually have these in their homes where they have different boxes for their mesh network, and if one goes out, the other two are still there. So if you've ever seen those, you can see them for sale, they're out there. But mesh networks are a little bit nicer because if you do have something that goes down, the rest of your network is still up. All right, talked about the client server network already, so I'm not gonna, I think I've beaten that into the ground quite a bit. Peer-to-peer networks are interesting. So you actually have to let the person that you're sharing your data with or your files with, you have to give them the authority to access your computer. Yes, so if you and your buddies want to transfer files, that's great. No, do not go to illegal websites and try to do this. But anyway, yes, peer-to-peer networks are out there, but your device can act as both a client and a server at the same exact time. Because if you're allowing people to download files off your computer, you become the server, they're the client. If you want to download stuff off theirs, they become the server and you are the client. So that's how that works with peer-to-peer networks. Well, we're almost done, okay. Usually I take all 75 minutes on this, not today. Okay, of course when we're out here and they open the door, they're gonna go, where'd everybody go? Why is it all quiet around here? All right, so in organizations, we have two different types of networks. The first is an intranet. So I kind of learned this. Over time, so if somebody within the organization sends an email, like you can't be at home to read everything. You actually have to like log in. So the only place you could access it is on the grounds where you work. And that's part of the intranet. So it works like the internet, but you usually have to log in to see resources. Of course, nowadays it's a little bit different in that if you have a username and password from your organization, you can open it up from anywhere. But if somebody else doesn't have the username and password and tries to access something, they're either going to try to ask you for yours, which you should never give out. I think I've mentioned that before. But that's how that works. So you have to be like a part of the organization. If you're not, then you can't access the resources. Extranet's a little different. So with this, the example I'm going to give you is there are some organizations that put like construction bids out, like bids for construction. So the company will have their website for this, but you, the supplier, the person that's trying, or the company that's trying to win the bid, you actually have to have your own username and password and your own login. So you log into that, you submit your bid as the company, and then you log out. But the site is being paid for by us, the people that want the construction bids. Now this also works for ordering supplies. So there will be companies out there where they'll notice, hey, you're running low on these supplies, do you need more? Because they log into the extranet that your organization has the main access to, and it works like that. So just keep in mind that there are companies out there that will look at your supply levels as an organization, and they'll ask you, do you want to buy more of X, or do you want to buy more of Y, you're running low on this. So that's how extranets work as well. There's multiple examples. Okay, in regard to network security, so next week we talk more about security, we talk more about privacy. Next week is more focused on you. It's not so much focused on computers next week. I just want you to keep that in mind. There will be some interesting terms I use next week for that chapter, but keep in mind, it's all gonna be like you. Like I want you to think about yourselves when I talk about all this. So, firewalls. If you think about the word firewall, just think about that for a minute. We're trying not to let the bad stuff get through, Okay, we're trying not to let the bad people get through. We're trying not to let the hackers, the crackers, yes, there's two different types, get through. We'll talk about that next week. But we can have software that protects our organization. We can have hardware that protects our organization. And it also creates what is called a proxy server. Now, I put that in the upper right corner of the slide so that you can see what a proxy server is. So the proxy server, it can be an actual computer or it can be an application. It can be software or hardware that acts as the intermediary between the clients that are trying to seek resources from us. And the firewall also works the other way if we're trying to access something we're not supposed to be accessing at work, and the firewall should work the same way. It should protect us from those threats. Some organizations have what is called intrusion detection systems. So these work with the firewall, and yes, the network administrator should have access to this to be able to see all the incoming and outgoing traffic. So if somebody's trying to log in like a whole bunch of times, that intrusion detection system should tell somebody in the organization that somebody's trying to get in. And then you gotta try and shut that off. Virtual private networks have been around for a really, really long time. So I'm just gonna explain this very, very easily for you. You download some software onto your computer. You still have to have a username and password for that. So get this. So you're gonna log in through your application, username, password, to get somewhere. And then you probably have to log in again with that username and password wherever you're trying to go using that network. So it's essentially you have to have two sets of usernames and passwords. So it creates that secure connection between your computer, your device, and whatever you're trying to access, whatever organization you're trying to access. Yes, they've been around for a really long time. If you've seen the commercials, yes, it's actually exactly what the commercials are portraying. But a lot of us don't really need that because we're smart and we don't access weird things, right? I hope. For some reason, I had some strange dream about this last night, and I forgot I was even lecturing on this until I got in this morning. So anyway, about like intrusion and all that other stuff, it was awesome. All these pop-up windows I had on my computer in that dream, it was wild. Then I woke up and I'm like, oh, thank God that wasn't real. So anyway, this should come as a shock to you, but today's career in IT is the network administrator. So just keep in mind that they actually do a lot more than just like sit around and look at traffic and stuff like that. So they get paid a lot of money. Median salary now is $95,000 a year. Usually these candidates have a combination of degrees and also certifications. Yes, getting certifications in network, especially in networks, will help you get a job as a network administrator. Just keep that in mind as well. And we have had a pretty robust networking program here in the building. I have no idea what they're gonna do when they move us to the E-building next year. I have no idea where all that equipment in that room. If you haven't seen that room, if anybody wants to see the room, I can open it up and show you, but I was gonna do that on the tour. But if anybody is actually interested in what is in the networking room, I can go open it after class and you can go, okay, all right, so right after we're done, I'll go open it up while I'm transferring videos in here, but we're done. That's it, I think. There's one more slide. We're already doing this. Seriously, we're doing telepresence now. We don't actually have to be there. Isn't that great? That's awesome. Okay. Anyway, done with that. People at home, people watching, you were great. Hey, we have another chapter of Excel on Thursday. See you soon. Thank you for watching.